Easter and Christmas can be confusing days for UUs, especially those of us who grew up Christian or in Christian or secular households, sharing in the widespread cultural practices of these seasons, but also being skeptical or outright rejecting stories of virgin births and faith healings and resurrection. But after all, we UUs generally are rational and reasoning people. And yet, for hundreds of years, our forebears embraced teachings of Jesus and the lessons of Christianity, even as their relationship with Jesus changed. Unitarian Theodore Parker famously preached that Jesus showed us how to be good humans, not how to venerate him. He wrote, "Christianity is not a system of doctrines, but rather a method for attaining oneness with God." Now, God can be a little tricky for UUs too. And so I hearken back to John Dietrich, who is considered to be the father of religious humanism and a Unitarian minister. And he talked about a cosmic theology of God as an indwelling power in the universe, not as a kind of a separate entity or something of that nature. And that works for me. I don't know if it works for you, but that works for me. And he said not to look for supernatural events to save us, but to get busy doing the work of saving each other, which I appreciate. So what do we do with Easter and resurrection? Well, for me, resurrection is a metaphor for rebirth that occurs in the cycles of nature and also in our own lives after times of hardship and loss. For each of us has our own cross to bear, right? That's where that term comes from Jesus. And each of us goes through times of suffering when the life we thought we knew was over. It may be a physical or mental health crisis, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a home or a job that was our identity, or even a crisis of faith. Resurrection in nature, personal experience, or the biblical story gives us reason to hope that in time we will pass out of the tomb or the chrysalis or whatever it is that is holding us, this dark time, our grief perhaps, to establish a new life. Eventually, in some form or other, we will feel joy and peace and love again. And Easter is also about the meaning we make from our trials and how we use that in the world. For no matter how wide the opening of the tomb is, we are the ones who decide to pass through it and when into the brightness of day. And maybe we don't do that consciously, but we do come out. And what does that mean for each of us? What have we learned from our suffering, from our internal time of trial? And perhaps most importantly, how will my experience of suffering affect how I am with others? Can it make me more compassionate, more empathetic, more patient? I believe it can. I believe it can thin the distance between me and other people. It can help bridge that distance. And it can also thin that distance between me and the spirit of life that I call God. So may you find faith that all sorrow has its season and that joy will come again. Now, although I have learned things about Ramadan and about Passover, they are not my traditions. I'm inspired by them, but they are not my traditions. And so this morning, I decided that I would share reflections on these holidays by a Muslim UU and by a Jewish member who is close to Unitarian Universalism. Because again, it is a pluralistic faith. And sometimes we want to think of Unitarian Universalism as being atheistic, or that humanism means that we can't somehow have a sense of God or a sense of the holy. There's concern about how we express that and how we share that with others in conversation and in being able to share our own personal experiences. And I want to let go of that. I want to remember that a pluralistic faith means that we can embrace so many different belief systems, so many different sets of beliefs, that we come together to share our values, not a specific way of thinking about the divine. So I want to share this piece by Reverend Summer El Beati. She is actually a member of the regional UUA staff who lives in Southern California, and she gave me permission to share this. Her reading begins with a quote from the Quran: "And celebrate the name of God morning and evening." And that's from Surah Al-Insan 76:25. She writes, "Many years ago, I experienced a serious crisis of faith. I felt buried by pain and suffering, and I wasn't sure if I would ever dig my way out to see the sun rise again. This crisis of faith took me on a journey to find myself and to come to an understanding. In my suffering, there was a holy and sacred place." Since the Prophet Muhammad first received a revelation of the Quran in the cave of Hira, Ramadan is a celebration of this fact. I tried to embrace my crisis as an entrance to a cave that the divine had opened up for me. All I needed to do was enter, to seek refuge, and this I did. It's always a challenge to feel a sense of the holy when I go through difficulties. But it's at that exact time that I need to find more time for prayer, study, and meditation. When the holy month of Ramadan approaches, it becomes a beautiful reminder to return to myself and remember who I truly am and what the divine is calling me to become. Ramadan is a time of going deeper into a spiritual oasis, like entering a cave for a few hours while I fast from bodily nourishment. It's an invitation to pause for a whole month while I find spiritual awakening by studying the Quran more deeply and performing embodiment prayers 5 times a day. It becomes a holy retreat from the mundane, even in the midst of the ordinary. For 30 days, I fulfill my spiritual needs as if great hunger for the divine spirit, and hopefully I emerge from the cave transformed. This holy experience is the healing. This sacred time is an abundant act of love. And this is what I seek each year during this most blessed of months, so I can answer the call of the divine spirit. What if I were to find spiritual nourishment by entering whatever doors opened up to the divine spirit on a daily basis? What if each day I awakened and began it in theological reflection or praising the name of the divine each morning and evening? What would I become? And then she offers this prayer. Bismillah-ir-Rahman-ir-Rahim. O Blessed One, the one with many names, Holy Divine, answer our call as we seek doors to know you better and caves to provide us with spiritual respite and healing. Amen.